214 people on the team, 40 nations. 40 nations.
40 nations. It was wild.
Tremendous.
To sit down at dinner with someone from South Africa, someone from Ireland, someone from Australia, and someone from Canada, and that was your normal dinner table.
Do we have a photo?
You do.
Of that adventure? One at least?
This is when we were in Acapulco. This is when a disaster, a hurricane had just hit, and it was a wild time.
Now you came back from this, and we could certainly spend a lot of time talking about those months. How long on board?
I was on board for a year.
A full year.
I got to come home early. Usually you spend 2 years because my dad was dying. So
now you came back, and back to Nanaimo, and at this point dealt with something that wasn't a stranger to you, not a stranger to many people with us this hour: depression.
And it was so weird because while I was away, God worked a massive miracle in my dad's life. They put him on a test drug that was working for him. He had better heart function than he'd had in years and years and years. And he was expected to live. I got a great job. All of these great things were happening. I'd had a massive high with God. I'd been in God's greenhouse growing and growing and growing. I'd been part of starting a young people's ministry, and yet I was really grappling with depression.
Was there an explanation for that? Was it chemical? Was it something about your journey?
You know what? It was something that I had dealt with and denied for years and years. It's something that it runs in our family. It's something that God just needed me to deal with. I've always been so capable, and depression challenged that because I didn't have control over it, and it made me feel less than capable, less than able.
Sucks the wind out of your sails.
It does, and I felt put on the shelf. I had just been doing great things for God and felt like I was doing the right thing for God, and I had been obedient, and He had done amazing things. My best friend came to Christ, my aunts came to Christ, all of these things were happening, and yet I was put on the shelf.
Like and Elijah after Jezebel and the prophets of
I felt just like that.
Just pouting in the cave.
And just weeping and needing God to do something. And I remember at that time, this is the point that God brought me to. I remember I had a little apartment, and I remember kneeling on the floor, my head on the sofa, and saying, God, I have nothing to give you. And that was when I just heard Him say, and that's all I want. All I want is you. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a weeper too. But okay. That's all He wanted.
I'm ready for you.
You know what, that's all He wanted from me. And that's what I needed to know.
Absolute surrender. Nothing in my hand I bring.
And I remember also hearing Him say, God is so good, and He is so faithful in those hard times to give us a word from Him. And the other thing He said is, if this was not good for you, I would not have you go through it. If this was not my best for you, I would not have you go through it. And that gave me hope. I had something to hold on to, knowing if this was not His best for me, I would not be going through it.
What an encouragement. And you look at that whole chapter as God preparing and positioning you for what He had, once He had all of you.
That's what He needed.
Wow. We're going to have to fast track. You ended up going to Georgia.
Yeah.
With OM, the people behind the Logos.
They asked me to come there. I didn't ever expect to go to Georgia as missions, but
that was all meaningful time.
It's amazing.
And then, back home to Canada and kicking and screaming to Ontario.
Yes, I told God I wouldn't come to us. Not to be rude, but I found out that people from BC are very arrogant about this. They're not very nice about Ontario.
Well, they don't like to leave their mountains. That I learned when I was at Bible school in Saskatchewan.
God challenged me on that, and He challenged my attitude because I received an incredibly warm welcome in Ontario. Didn't know a soul, and within a week I had made friends, girlfriends that are my friends till today.
What else did God have waiting for you in Ontario?
He had a man waiting for me.
First anniversary coming up on?
We just had it.
Oh, you've already just had it?
The 16th. Yeah.
1 year ago this month. And there's Dan and his beautiful bride. Nice surprise.
That man is a blessing. He is created just for me.
great reward for obedience too, I must say.
Yeah, sometimes during the wait, I did not think it was worth it, but God used my singleness. That season of singleness was preparation.
Now, you had a Mack truck in what was a wonderful career with Mitchell's books, Mitchell Family Books. You and I both know many others who are grieving the demise of that company. But God has, in more ways than one, had a phoenix rise from the ashes. What has it meant for you? How did God bring hope out of mourning, truly grieving?
God really revealed himself that he's my provider. My workplace is not my provider. My employer is not my provider. He is my provider. And shortly after R.G. Mitchell shut their doors.
And by the way, you were media and consumer relations.
Yeah, I loved my work.
That was your job?
I would get comments all the time. People would say, how did you get this job? It was God. God did this job. He put it all together. I loved my work, and my whole heart was in it. And that showed because after Mitchell's closed their doors, I got phone calls from different publishers saying, would you consider still working with us? Would you consider still doing stuff with our authors? And I thought, I'd love to. I'd love to.
And so you founded Graf-Martin Communications.
I did.
And you are doing just what you were doing. Do you still have Ellen's Picks?
I still have Ellen's Picks.
Tell us what Ellen's Picks is.
Ellen's Picks became a ministry resource. What happened when I moved back to Canada from Georgia, I realized that the Canadian church was so under-resourced. Nobody knew what was even out there and available. People would be writing their own Bible studies or searching and searching for different resources. So there were tons available to them because living in the Bible Belt of the U.S., we had so many opportunities to learn. So I wanted to tell people. That's just my personality. I love researching and I love telling people. So that's what Ellen's Picks was developed. I would read different books and resources, review them. Ones that I thought, you know, I had come on a missions budget before. I knew what it was like to have a budget for product and Bible studies, and so I would research the ones that I thought were the best and review them and put them into a newsletter, developed a website. And
for all age groups.
All age groups. Yeah. Youth is something that's really near to my heart, but for all age groups, and that went across Canada. It was wild.
So you've still got your great job.
Yeah.
Except now you're the boss.
Yeah, which is, God is my boss. Honestly, he's the one who's opened every door.
Someone said to you that you make good choices looking at your life. You won't take credit for that.
You know, I make choices that God reveals to me. And it's not about me making good choices. It's about him. It's about me listening and stopping and saying, okay, what's going on? And then listening and then following what he tells me. And yielding when I've already started down a path and he's like, whoa, 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 girl, I know you could do it yourself. That's what your favorite phrase is. Yeah. But whoa, 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 I'm going to do something else. And I have to back off sometimes. My poor husband, he knows this. But yeah, that's been the life story. You know, it's God making the choices.
Someone has said every person's life is a fairy tale written by God's fingers.
I love that quote. Hans Christian Andersen.
But for some, I'm sure, it's like that picture we started with this hour. It's not looking like a fairy tale. It's looking like a storm front moving in fast. And I just think I'm going to read it in the NIV. Romans 12:2 says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able, as Ellen was, to test and approve what God's will is. This is the part I love. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. You can struggle and strive and sink deep, scrambling for what you think might work. Or you can let God show you what he wrote down in his book before you were born. Is that all true?
It is, and I think the hardest part for us and for me was to understand and to grasp that his heart toward me is good. His heart toward me is good.
You can trust him.
I can trust him.
Even in those places where there are disappointments. And here's another great little P.S. Speaking of Mitchell's books, Faith, Family, Books, and Gifts is pleased to announce the opening of a new 11,000 square foot retail bookstore and gift shop in Toronto at the McCowan and 401 Crossroads this coming March. The new owners have purchased the remaining assets from the liquidator of the recently bankrupt R.G. Mitchell Family Books chain, with a plan to bring a new brand of Christian retailing to the Toronto market. They're talking about a coffee bar and a music area, original art displays by top Canadian Christian artists. Very exciting. Grand opening celebration with dozens of authors, media artists, and Christian leaders, Saturday, April 4th. That's off McCowan Road. Isn't that good news?
That is good news.
Really,
That's exciting.
Really good news. Larry Willard is president of the new venture, the owner and publisher of Castle Key Books Canada, the largest non-denominational publishing company in our country. So, you know, it's just when you think it's all over, God has a surprise at the end of that road.
And it's not the end. There are surprises and surprises and surprises to come.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us, Ellen.
Thank you.
And for using your gifts in such a wonderful way for